Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for today's Wealth Wednesday. I am pleased to be joined by Lamont Brown, who is the owner and wealth manager of Alna Wealth Management here in Fredericksburg. And Lamont is here today to talk to us about retirement. So, Lamont, take it away.
Hello, everyone, and I am back. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit briefly today about this. I just want to have a conversation with you because this is something I really, really enjoy, but I really want to share with you today a lot about this. Next slide. It's your retirement party. This is the point you waited for, and you made it through all of those ups and downs, changes in management, changes, reorganization, all of those things happened throughout your whole career, and now you made it. You made it to the last day, and this is your last piece of cake that they always break out when someone's ready to retire. This is your last moment, and you go to your office for that one last time. You pause, you look over your shoulder, you see that box there, you pick it up, you turn the lights off, and you walk out. You walk out of that door for the last time, and you feel this complete energy around you, this energy that is unmistakable. It's the point where you know you've accomplished something. For decades, you toiled away, dealt with things you didn't really want to have to deal with, all to make it to this day. You turn on your car radio, you point the car out of the parking garage, and you start retirement. It's then when you start to see that there's more to life than just this point in time. And retirement is really about the changes that are going to happen. And you're ready for that because now you're ready to answer those four questions that all of us have to answer when we get to retirement. First and foremost, will my money last? Secondly, what happens if the market crashes? What am I going to do? Third is what happens to my spouse if something happens to me? And then finally, can I undo any of these things? Today, I'm going to go through all of those questions and hopefully help you come to a better solution for yourself and understanding what's going on. First, we're going to outline the situation. What are you dealing with? And tell you that you're not alone. Second, we're going to go through and talk about how to go about doing these in the key considerations. And then finally, I'm going to finish up with what a good retirement income plan looks like. Next slide, please. 64% of everyone who's pre retirement is deathly afraid of running out of money. So if you're in that state, you know what it feels like to not know whether or not I'm going to be able to uh, continue to maintain my lifestyle. And that is the number one question that all of us are plagued with because we see the difference. When we were working, everything was great. We just put money into a bucket. We received one paycheck and everything was grand. We didn't have to consider, when do I take money out? Where do I take money from? Will this money actually last? Do I need to update my investments every year? All of those things were kind of done for us because we were receiving that income that we knew was dependable and it was straightforward. But now that accumulation is over, it's time for us to start thinking about all the decisions that we're going to have to make as we build towards that reliable income that we can just relax at night knowing is going to happen. But I put this slide there just so you know you're not alone. Everybody is concerned about the exact same thing. So, part of this whole retirement process is you got to build a strategy that first, uh, times out your income. When is your income going to be coming in? Second, you start to think about those withdrawal strategies because all of those things are important. When are you taking money out? How much are you taking out so that you can maintain your lifestyle and not go over and not create too many taxes? You want to think about your spouse. That survivor protection is always top of mind as we think about all of these decisions that we have to make. And then finally, tax sequencing. I put that one last because most of us overlook the whole impact that when I take out more money, it's going to create more taxes. When I do this, it's going to do that. You want to always be thinking about it, but I didn't put it first because taxes shouldn't drive everything, but they should be a consideration. Next slide, please. The first part of all of this is getting your guarantees correct. These guarantees are guarantees like Social Security, and we're going to talk about the other ones. But the first thing you want to really understand is Social Security. For most of us, this knowledge eludes us, but it's one decision, three options, and no do overs. You have to consider that one decision, three options, and no do overs. If you take early, permanently reduces your social security income for the rest of your life. This is not something you can go back and say, oh, I made a mistake. Let me change that. No, this is permanent. The other thing you want to consider when you're doing this is anything you do is going to impact your spouse. So if I reduce my social security by taking early at age 62, then it's going to impact my spouse. The next thing is you want to think about taking social security when you hit your full retirement age, which is either 66 to 67 or even waiting until age 70. Each year you wait past your full retirement age is going to increase your social security by 8%. Now, this is where Social Security is different than other income. Everyone says, hey, just going to take early because I want to make sure I get my money. But you have to think about Social Security from a different perspective. If you take early, first and foremost, if you earn more than $24,480 in a year, they're going to reduce your Social Security. They're going to penalize you for doing that. Next, when you start to think about that, and that's $2 for every $1 over that $24,480. The next thing you want to consider is this: Social Security is never fully taxed. So not only are you getting benefits from Social Security, but it's never going to be fully taxed. The highest tax rate on Social Security is, guess what? 85%. So that means if you earn the maximum amount of Social Security, you earn income through the roof in other places, your Social Security is always going to only be taxed at 85% if you're at the highest level. And thirdly, the most important part that makes Social Security one of the greatest things that you have working for you is the cost of living adjustment. People can say what they want, but when you get that bump up every year, when groceries goes up and all these other things, electric and water and all those things go up, and your Social Security is keeping pace, it really stands to reason why you want to wait to push off starting Social Security first. And if you're going to work, waiting until full retirement age is the only option, because taking early, you're going to be penalized. So the first decision you want to be really focused and keen on is getting the Social Security decision right, because that is a guarantee that is going to really set the foundation for the rest of your retirement income strategy. Next. Now we've come to the rest of the guarantees. There's really two things you got to think about. There's the things you have and the things you have to build. Guarantees are those things that you have, things that you've accumulated over time or that you've earned through work and all of those things. Social Security being the top one. Then we have pensions. I know this is the area where we talk about several pensions. The first pension we talk about is VRS, the Virginia Retirement System. It's a pension. It's a pension that you've earned that you need to figure out how to maximize. The key decisions around VRS is when to take it and whether or not to get spousal benefits. Those things are going to, and that money is there for the rest of your life. Then you have the FERS, which is Federal Employee Retirement System pension, which is one I know and work with quite a bit. And this one is very important because it has the cost of living adjustments that Social Security has. It's going to keep pace with inflation. So you have these two things that are happening, but your VRS and your FERS are going to be taxed at regular ordinary income tax rate. So they're not going to get that benefit that Social Security has. So you can see why you really want to maximize that Social Security. From there, you want to think about annuities. These are things that you go on out, you purchased, and now you're going to turn on. The one thing that eludes most annuities, it's not all, because there are some out there that do this, but most annuities are not going to get cost of living adjustments. So what that means is you started this annuity, you're getting $5,000 on day one retirement starts. Well, 20 years from today, $5,000 is not going to be it's not going to be able to do the same thing that 5,000 was able to do when you started retirement. And that's where the annuities can kind of trip things up. They're guaranteed income for life, and they do have spousal benefits, and they do have all these other bells and whistles. But one thing they don't have, which pensions and Social Security has, and that's the cost of living adjustment. So you really want to think about how this all fits together. But the left side of this equation is really focused on maximizing those guaranteed income sources. Because once you set that guaranteed income floor, everything else is just gravy. Next slide. We're now transitioning to that point where now you have full control. You have complete control over how much you earn and how much you don't earn. You're receiving your Social Security, you're receiving your pension, you have an annuity, and now you have control over, do I give myself more than I need? Do I give myself more because I want to have more? And this is where those decisions come from. It's going to come from that savings and those other things you put away. Next slide. First things first, non-retirement income sources. I know it's been a while, but we can now consider interest a legitimate income source with say high yield savings accounts pushing limits now that we hadn't seen prior to now. We can actually consider that in our whole income plan, right? But it's not something we're going to build our house on because it's just keeping pace with inflation. So you don't want to consider it that way. But then you have this next thing, which is called dividends. Dividends are paid when you own a stock that is going to continue, that has come to a place where they've decided to give you money for holding that stock. It's like rent for a piece of property. You're getting rent while you wait. And this is a good thing because these dividends payments continue to grow as the stock grows. And you want to really start to think about that. And sometimes they don't go away, and sometimes they do. It's not guaranteed. It's not something you can put your hat on and say this is always going to be there, because there comes times where companies do stop their dividend, which is a very important part that we can talk about at a different time. But this is the thing that you want to be considering when you're looking at interest and these other dividends. And then the final one is portfolio withdrawals. Portfolio withdrawals is different than dividends or interest. It's where you start to essentially sell the stocks or bonds that you've accumulated, paying taxes, because there's going to be either long-term or short-term tax gains in this situation, and using those funds. It's like walking out to your backyard, cutting a limb off the tree and turning it into firewood. It's simply that plain. But you want to be thinking about it when you're doing this. What is going to be the impact on your long-term goals and on your taxes? Like I said, the tax tail doesn't wag the dog, but we want to be cognizant of everything that's happening, because taxes become important when you start selling things and creating gains that now you have to pay taxes for. So those are the three non-retirement income sources. There are others out there, like you can think about continuing to work, part-time income, all of those things out of scope, but those are other things that you can be thinking about. Next slide, please. Now we come to the big one, right? This is where all of us put all of our effort. We put as much money as we humanly can into these accounts. We reduce our taxes over time. And now we have this large bucket with all these rules. You have to be 59 and a half. You can't take out, and when you take money out, you're going to be paying full taxes on it. You have to do all these things in order to make sure that you're able to use these. And each one of these plans comes with a different set of rules. The good thing is you have this money that's there. The bad thing is you have to know what the rules are. You have to know how to play the way it's meant to be played. The other rules you want to consider as you start to look forward into the future, which we're going to talk more in depth about that next month, and that is required minimum distributions and all of those other rules that come to play when it comes to these large retirement accounts. So when you have money that's set aside in pre-tax, you're going to eventually have to do required minimum distributions. You're going to have to do that. And that's something you want to start planning around. And is it inside your employer 401k? Is it Roth? Is it regular? All these rules and all these things you need to be aware of when you get to that point where you're going to be taking money out of these accounts. The other thing you want to consider is if it's not Roth, you're going to be paying taxes, and it's going to come out as regular or ordinary taxes. So you really want to be mindful of how much or how little you take out each year, because every time you take money out, you have to pay. So you want to be considering all of those things. And this is where most people's bulk of their variable income comes from. So each year you're either deciding I want to take out more or deciding I want to take out less. And this is the bucket that is going to be there for you in the long run, because you are going to set it up so that you can ensure that it's going to be there and it's going to take care of you later on. Next slide, please. Now, the final part of this we want to really, really nail down is what happens if something happens to me. Most of us don't consider all of the things that can possibly happen, but some of the surprises that catch most people off guard. Most pensions, unless you've added on survivor benefits, just end. And if you have survivor benefits, normally your survivor is going to receive only a portion of what they would have received had you been living and stayed there. So you want to consider these things, because you don't want to consider the fact that, hey, everything's going fine, and then you pass away, and now your significant other has to figure out how to keep all these bills and all these other things going, because, hate to say it, most of our lifestyles don't change. And when one spouse is not there, most of the time, everything stays consistent. So you want to be thinking about what are those pension elections going to look like, and how much can your survivor depend on when you are no longer there. Next part of this, we kind of alluded to this earlier, which was Social Security. Social Security is important because whatever's left, your significant other is going to get the higher of the two. So if you took early, reduced your benefit, and now that higher is less than it would have been, you've now impacted not only your life, but your significant other's life. So that's why that Social Security conversation has to be had together. And you have to come together to say, hey, this is how we're going to go about doing this thing. Then you have to consider required distributions. So if your significant other was over the age of 73 in today's time, and now they have to start taking distributions, they need to be aware of these things. And then finally, going from being married filing joint to now being married, now filing as a single, creates a tax situation for a lot of people. So if you are receiving Social Security, pensions, and distributing required minimum distributions before your significant other passed away, and you still keep that same level of income, you're now going to be in a different tax bracket, because your deductions are going to be less and the tax brackets have changed. So you want to be aware of this tax impact of that single filer, so that when that actually happens, you're not surprised and you're not being penalized for all the taxes you could have avoided that you're no longer avoiding. So you want to be thinking about all of these things, because like I said, when you start taking income, that's when you have to start considering taxes. Now, we've covered everything, but now let's go into what does a good plan look like. Next, a good retirement income plan starts first by coordinating all the income sources. When are you going to start Social Security? When are you going to start your pensions? Whether or not you're going to have spousal benefits, what those spousal benefits are going to look like. And your whole intent is to create a predictable flow of income, so that at the end of the day, you can sleep at night knowing that you're not having to worry about all these decisions. For most, retirement is a challenge because you went from receiving one paycheck to now receiving many paychecks from different organizations and different institutions. So you really want to be thinking about, how am I going to manage all of these things as I go through this process? And you want to create predictable cash flow, and then you want to reduce the impact of market downturns. Most of us in accumulation, our portfolio is painted the same color, beige. It was simple, it was plain, it was straightforward. When you're in retirement, you have to consider that if the markets go down today, where's my income coming from? Do I want to be pulling it out of an investment that is down 15% or 20%? Probably not. So I want to make sure that I'm establishing my portfolio so that when the markets go down, I'm not as impacted, or I can just watch from the sidelines because I'm not pulling my income from that money. You want to be thinking about that. And then the last two things, you want to be thinking about your surviving spouse. This is often overlooked and things that you have to consider. Social Security, one of them will go away. So you want to be asking the question, can they survive on one, the higher of the two? Second, what happens when my pension goes to half? And that's where most pensions go. They go to half. And if I have an annuity, does it have survivor benefits on that annuity? And if it doesn't, will they be able to survive without that? So you want to be thinking about all of those conversations and making sure you're asking and making sure you understand all these iterations, because these are important decisions. And when you get into retirement, there's no do-overs. You have to get it right, because you can't go back and undo Social Security. You can't go back and undo expenses and spending and things like that, and you're not receiving any more money coming in. It's not to make you afraid, it's just to make you aware, so that at the end of the day, you're doing the things that are right for both you and your family. And then you want to look at the taxes. You want to minimize taxes over your lifetime. First things first is making sure the income is right and starting to think about that. Today, I've covered a lot. And if the light didn't come on, or the light was still a little dim, and you want to understand a little bit more about what I'm talking about, don't hesitate. Please reach out via email, shoot me a quick email, or reach out via phone. My phone number is out there on the web. Just reach out directly to me, and I will be happy to answer your questions and bring any light to any parts of this that are confusing or still just eluding you. I hope you enjoyed today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next month. We're going to talk about taxes again, and this is going to be mid-year taxes this time, right? So look forward to it. Take care.
I think it's going to be fantastic. Thank you so much, Lamont, for making these presentations. I know our community really enjoys them, and I learn a lot. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Aaron. See you next month.